Hey everybody. So, apparently Mother Nature decided at least one more round of hot. It's another warm one here. So we're not moving much, not doing much, and sitting around inside, and the air conditioning is a pleasant feeling. But I was thinking, because I was watching a few videos, just random videos, and I was thinking about why atheists have such a hard time understanding why non-atheists or theists, or Christians especially, believe that being an atheist is being the same as a devil worshiper or a follower of Satan or evil. One thing that I think everyone needs to remember, and this is the hardest part for people that do not believe to understand and to accept, and that is, if you honestly and truthfully believe in a God, and you believe in Jesus, and you believe in the whole Christian story and the whole Christian dogma, if you believe that, then yes, absolutely everyone else, everyone that is not a Christian, whether you're an atheist or not, is considered an enemy of God, an enemy of Christianity, and someone who listens to Satan. Now, they may not draw pentagrams and blood on the ground and have seances and do witchcraft and that sort of thing, but you have to understand that they honestly and truthfully believe in the us versus them mentality of God is on our side and screw everything else, because everything else is of the devil. Everything else is of Satan. You have to accept that fact when dealing with a theist. I used to be one. I know that. Everything that I heard that was in the face of the Christianity and in the face of the beliefs that I held, I had to weigh them against the fact that I thought maybe perhaps it was just Satan finding a new avenue in order to get me to turn away from God. It wasn't until I completely and totally understood and accepted the fact that the Christian faith is based on mythology the same way that all of the Greek gods and all of the Roman gods were, that I was able to stop feeling that that was the influence, that all of the questions that I had didn't come from Satan. It wasn't all a bunch of demons of doubt pounding their way into my head. There was one time in, I'll say 2001 or so, that I was it was 2001. I spent a lot of time on a bulletin board system, and it was anomalies.net, if I remember right. As far as I know, they're still around, but I found them because I was really interested in all of the goings-on that were with all the NASA missions to Mars, and I got really heavily into learning more about Mars and, pouring through tons and tons of pictures that were coming back from, I can't remember. The pictures were put out by Malin. It was MGSS, if I remember right. And it was one of the first orbiters that we had. Not the Mars Global Surveyor. Actually, no, I think that was it. I think it was the Mars Global Surveyor. And in the process of learning more about that, I, of course, started getting caught up in the conspiracy theories about the buildings on Mars and the face on Mars and all of that sort of jazz. And on the anomalies.net website, from time to time I would go ahead and jump into some of the other sections, because there wasn't always a lot of discussion going on in the Mars section. And so, in between discoveries from people that would spend even more time than me poring over the images, I would jump around here, there, and yon. Well, somewhere along the way, I ran into I believe it's called panspermia account of abiogenesis, where the earth was seeded by an intelligent being, and I mean, this was all connected with everything. This was, you know, the aliens built the what are they called? Pyramids. The aliens built the pyramids. You know, Stargate was basically, you know, the story of that whole thing, and that somewhere there may actually still be some of those portals here on Earth, and we just had to find them, or maybe they were all broken. But anyway, I mean, the mysteries of Egypt and all of these other things, basically everything that was unexplainable was attributed to aliens, and aliens coming and visiting, aliens putting, you know, humankind on Earth. I mean, we've seen Star Trek. If you've seen Star Trek The Next Generation, I don't remember which episode it was, but there's an episode where the Romulans and the Klingons and the humans all are looking for specific parts of a code that would eventually lead them to a planet where they could scan. I think it was part of a genetic code, and once they scanned the genetic code, a hologram popped up, and it showed an alien that was humanoid that said, hey, check it out, we started all of this. We started all three of you, and due to the way that the evolution on your planets worked, you guys don't look exactly the same, but as you can see, you're all humanoids, which was also, I think, part of the Star Trek way of explaining why pretty much all of the aliens looked like humans to some degree. Or the humans looked like all the other aliens to some degree, whichever way you want to look at it. So, once I thought about that, and I thought, you know what, maybe it was aliens. Maybe aliens came, you know, drove by, launched a probe down here, seeded the planet with the initial beginnings of life, and whether they watched it happen or whether they didn't watch it happen and just let it go, it doesn't matter. But once mankind actually got to the point where they were halfway decently civilized, then perhaps they sent an ambassador to the Earth that would be born of a virgin, and that Jesus was an alien. Now, if you think about it, it almost, except for the fact that we don't have any proof that aliens do exist and that they've ever visited the Earth, but if you think about it, then it all makes so much more sense. I mean, look at all of the movies that have been made around the Jesus story. Day the Earth Stood Still. You know, it's the guy comes down, he says, you guys need to chill out, and of course, as always, humankind freaks out, does something stupid, which causes all kinds of shit to go down, and then the main guy gets killed, and then he's brought back to the spaceship, and he's brought back to life. So boom, there you go, Jesus. Now, was it Jesus, or was it an alien, or was Jesus an alien? Was this guy an alien? Was he ever really dead? Did they bring him back to life? You know, it doesn't matter. The point is that if aliens were the ones that started life on Earth, and if Jesus was an alien, it makes so much more sense than to think that it was all divine and it was all supernatural. So the whole point that I'm trying to make with this is that I almost got sucked into believing that that was the case. I almost got to the point where I threw off all of the things that I believed and accepted an explanation that was just as outlandish and ludicrous and based on conjecture and wishful thinking as opposed to evidence. So I pulled back because eventually I kind of felt like, well, you know what, I can't really believe that because of the lack of evidence. It's funny, I couldn't believe that Jesus was an alien because of the lack of evidence supporting that idea. And so instead, I just went ahead and went back to believing that Jesus was the Son of God and my normal theistic self. I have a brother-in-law, and I've heard this from a couple of other people. Actually, I have two brother-in-laws, but I'm only going to talk about one specifically. He and I talked about aliens and UFOs one day, and he believes that, and I have found out since he said this, that there are many other people that believe this, but he believes that, you know, UFOs and alien sightings and whatnot are demons, and that Satan has this great ploy that he's going to use demons that look like aliens and demons that look like UFOs in order to turn people away from God. And I mean, having almost been sucked into the belief that that makes sense, and that the entire Christian faith makes sense if we just substitute aliens for God. It boggles my mind that people will go to such lengths to try to explain anything that they don't understand. We've all done it. There's a part of my ground, like when I mow out here, there's a part of the ground where when I roll over it, the engine almost always dies on the tractor. And it's usually this one specific place. And, you know, my thoughts are, well, maybe I'm going over some crazy little electromagnetic, you know, charge or some kind of field here, and it's disrupting the engine. And I'm thinking, do you have any idea how much of an electrical charge and how much of a disruption that would have to be in order to actually mess with the working mechanisms of this engine? And when I realize how big that would have to be, I mean, I would probably be able to feel that if I walked over it. It would probably be running through my body going, wah. So, you know, the fact that I think that, you think those things. We always do that. The real explanation is probably the way that, well, the fact that the tractor's probably 60 years old means that when it goes that way, it probably somehow cuts off some of the gas supply, and it's an internal thing. And so it almost dies and then gets a nice little spurt, and here we go, back up and running. So we all look for explanations. That's what everything's been. That's what the history of mankind has been. Let's find an explanation for the things we don't understand. And those that continue to search for answers are the ones that have gotten us where we are. Those are the ones that have made the leaps and the bounds and turned us into something more than nomadic goat herders, and gotten us out of the Bronze Age, gotten us through the Middle Ages, through the Renaissance, and to where we are now, where we're starting to become stagnant again. And while not in necessarily every area, there are some, that sense of wonder, of adventure, of travel and exploration. I've always been a big advocate of the space program, and it was like Neil deGrasse Tyson said in a tweet. He said, don't cry, basically, I'm paraphrasing here. He said, don't cry because the shuttle don't cry because the shuttle program, or don't be dismayed because the shuttle program is over. Be dismayed because we don't have a replacement. That's how I feel about a lot of things. I feel like we're in another mini dark age. We're having to fight against a lot of ignorance in our political system. We're having to fight against a lot of bigotry, racism, and just closed-mindedness in our societies, especially here in the United States. And these battles are going to wage for many more years. And I won't say that I'm afraid for the future, because I'm not. Because I honestly and truthfully believe that, as cheesy as this is, good will prevail. But it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be a long struggle. So just keep in mind that people, especially adults, are very set in their ways. And you have to understand that most of the time, they're not going to change based on something that you say. They have to see the evidence for themselves. But you also have to remember that you have to be patient, because people will come around. People will change their mind. People do change their mind. They change their mind all the time. But you have to give them a reason to believe what they end up believing. So I hope that helps clarify even though that went to a complete and total ramble there for a while, I just hope it helps to clarify some of what I've noticed. So have a wonderful afternoon, everybody. I'm going to go back inside and get out of this heat.